Hi, I'm Dan Schmitt. I do a motorcycle racing TV show, Team Chicago Challenge. My email is teamdan45@gmail.com. My website is teamchicago.tv. We're at Pennsboro Raceway in West Virginia. We're about 30 miles from Ohio, and I've raced in West Virginia many times at Summit Point, which is like 60 miles from Washington, D.C., on the other end of the state. So this is a reunion put together by a bunch of folks that love motorcycle racing. We've got about 40, 50 bikes show up, got a couple hundred people showing up. Some race cars, I'm going to show you some of the race cars that showed up. This is a very famous racetrack, and everybody's talking, I got great interviews. I caught some conversation inside, interviewing some of these great racers. So I'm going to put something together, and I'm also going to put some old racing footage into this so you can understand what this whole flat track thing is all about. I'm very lucky that I came through I got my pro license in 72, and I was so lucky that I got into racing when I did. And don't forget my email, teamdan45@gmail.com. Besides being a motorcycle racer reunion, this is also a reunion for some of the car drivers that have raced at this speedway. Now, I can't tell you exactly what these cars are, but the XR Super Series has run at this racetrack. So these are late model, modified stock cars. From what I have learned in research, it's 358 cubic inch, probably small block engines. Some good looking cars, and this one on the end, which looks like a vintage race car, but modern, great looking car. But I'm going to concentrate mainly on the motorcycle racers. We got a panel of racers up on the stage. We'll get to that in a little bit later. It's a very nice looking dirt car. Now these are dirt track cars by looking at the tires. And you can see there's different noses on the front of these cars, probably depending on what series they are running in. And now I spot a couple motorcycles. This first one looks like a Yamaha 500 single in a racing chassis. Then there's an XR 750 Harley. A Rotex single with number 42 on it. It could be Steve Morehead's bikes or one of his bikes. And then a Botaco 250 or 360 in a Champion frame. And now we're going to hear the national anthem by Sophie Lehman.
Couple bubbles. Stripes and bright stars through the peril of the sky. Over ramparts we watch, were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the
Thank you, Sophie Lehman. And now we're looking at Tammy Jo Kirk's Harley Davidson XR 750. Now, one thing I can tell you about Tammy's career with the AMA is she qualified for 13 AMA national finals. I know how tough it is because I almost qualified back in 83 or 82 on Al Bloom's Triumph at Peoria. I was the first alternate, but I did not make the show. Tammy has made the show 13 times, and her best finish is 6th at the DuQuoin Mile. Smitty built XR 750 Harley Davidson. He was a very fast motorcycle racer. And now we're looking at one of Dick Clanford's Nortons. Now, Dick Clanford won the Daytona 200-mile race on the beach in 49, 51, and 52, 3 times. This one here is a Norton Max top end, overhead cam. You can see the exposed valve springs. And this one's got an international bottom end. Could be similar to one of the bikes that Dick won on the beach 3 times. This other Dick Clanford motorcycle is a BSA 500 single Gold Star. And now we're going to turn it over to Mark Mederski with the panel of racers as they tell us how they got involved with motorcycle racing.
You know, I remember pictures of Clanford or talking with Dick Clanford, and you know, he put his race bike in the back of, I think it was a Buick or something like that. It was in the back seat of his Buick, took the seats out of it and drove to Daytona. And then he had a trailer that was made out of a pickup bed and all that kind of great rustic stuff, you know, and it's just kind of all slicked up now, and it's wonderful. The show's great, and it's on TV, so hundreds of thousands of people can watch it. But so we got a panel up here of people that I think you know, went through the glory days back when it was more difficult to race. It was hard to get sponsors. You probably weren't going to wind up on TV until, you know, I mean, we got guys like Dave Despain that did a killer job of bringing the sport to tens of thousands of people that could get it on their TVs. But so anyway, I got 4 simple questions, and there's no wrong answer, of course. And I think with 6 people up here, maybe just take a couple minutes, and before Greg gets the hook out and shut you down. But we'll try to get some good impressions. So, Greg, do you want to start off with?
The Kennedys have a big West Virginia connection. Bill Kennedy Sr. from Rosedale, West Virginia. He said like population 104. But Bill Kennedy has association with this track. He was involved with a local thoroughbred at a horse training facility and became a jockey at a young age. Bill Kennedy Sr. raced horses at Pennsboro Speedway at the fairs here until he hit a growth spurt and got too tall. Also, I would be remiss, Dave Estep. We're fortunate to have Joanne here today. Dave Estep was from the Ripley area in West Virginia. So, you know, we have some good claims to fame. Bobby Hill from Triadelphia up around Wheeling. I know High claims him, but that ain't true. He's from West Virginia. So we're thrilled to have this here. A great representation for the state, and just thrilled to have these folks here today. So, Mark, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah, so another question here, Steve, and for the rest of you. So I would imagine that you were a motorcycle rider, and then something happened. You got around somebody or some situation, and you went racing the first time. What influenced you? How'd you wind up being a racer?
A pro racer, or what are you talking about?
Well, no, the first time when you're just a punk.
Oh,
you know, and you go racing, you know, somewhere. And
well, I started riding a bike when I was 8 and racing one when I was 10, but it was a 100cc Hodaka. We didn't have mini bikes or the little bikes that you built in shop class. I mean, you had to buy an 80cc Yamaha or something like that. My father, he would race on the amateur level, and at that particular time, you know, there was probably 7 or 8 guys from my hometown, Findlay, Ohio, that would go and compete on the amateur level. Well, I'd go with them every weekend and kind of figured out what the flags meant, you know, when to go, when to stop, white flag, one more lap, and so I got a 100cc Hodaka, and he took the seat off it and put a board on it and put a little cover over it to where I could half-ass touch the ground on it, and I'd go out and compete, you know, on that thing week in and week out. And I met some of my lifelong best friends, you know, Scott Drake, Mike DeWeese. We all grew up racing together, Ricky Campbell, at the same period of time. We all come up through the amateur levels into the pro ranks to, you know, get our career going at that particular time.
So your dad was a racer?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Cool, good. Yeah, it's a good influence.
Yes, you know, he took care of me, you know, and he would go to work to fund everything, and we'd go to Gallion, Ohio, and run on Friday night, my brother Mike and I, and my mother, she would drive this little Ford Econoline van, and she would take us, and we'd unload the bikes, and we'd race, and it was a family affair. But it's just the wonderful people that I met through my career, starting out, like I said, when I was 8, 10, and, you know, like I said, growing up with Scott and Mike, and it was just amazing that we're still friends today, and we have such passion, you know, the fun things that we did, you know, in our life together.
Very good, thank you. How'd you start out racing?
I'm a little different than most people. I never had a motorcycle till I was 22. Married, a couple kids, full-time job. I had an older brother that used to build all of Bart Markle's race bikes. I mean, all of the road race, the half-mile, the short track bikes, all that stuff. But I never was around motorcycles, and my brother's 4 years older than I am, and I was always in the way. You know, we never had a whole lot to do with each other. But now and then he would call and say, hey, I'm going to the racing team, and I'm right along. So I'd go, and I used to see Carol Restweber go, you know, and back in Bart's early days. But anyway, one day he was going to the scrambles. At the end of the dirt track season, he had Bart Markle's 250 TT
Put that
bikes.
right up here. Talk straight into it.
Pardon?
Talk straight into that microphone. Like, tip it up like this.
Anyway, I went to a scrambles with him one day. I look like ice cream cone here. Anyway, he had one of Bart's TT bikes at the end of the season. He was going to go to the local scrambles, and I went along with him watching the races there one day. And he said, hey, you want to ride this thing? And I said, yeah, I like riding it around the pits and up in the hills. And holy cow, this could be a lot of fun. I never had a motorcycle. I was into hot rod cars at the time. Oh, anyway, on the way back home, I'm thinking I'm going to go get one of these motorcycles. I sold my hot rod the next week, and at Cummings Harley Davidson, where a lot of guys raced out of, went and bought a new Harley Sprint. Rode it on the street for a couple of weeks, and looking behind me all the time, wondering who the heck's going to run over me. Finally, I had started stripping it down and went to scrambles about half mile up the road, and they had a half mile at the local fairgrounds an hour north of me, so I took it up there. I didn't know anything, about gearing or anything. I just rode it the way it was. Ended up second. Smiled all the way home, you know. They only had 3 races in the whole state of Michigan that year. So I'm reading cycle news now quite often. I said, man, it looks to me like a guy go to Ohio every weekend and race one of these things. So I started working at Cummings Harley shop part-time, assembling motorcycles, and never got a paycheck. They just racked up a bill, and they'd order me a tank or a wheel, or pretty soon I had a CR Sprint race bike. So I got a novice license and headed to Springfield, Ohio, and ended up winning the thing by about 1.5 feet is all. And that's it. That's where it started. But I don't have a background before that. I mean, it's kind of an overnight deal, you know.
Yeah.
That's my story.
I didn't get started till I was like 17. hung out at the local motorcycle shop, and they were a bunch of bench racers. You know, I looked up to them. They were the best, you know, to hear them talk. And so they built a track at Cedarville, a local town there next to Xenia, and I was hanging out there, and a guy said I could ride his bike, so I pushed it, never did start. It was a Honda 350, and it just wouldn't run, and finally the owner of the motorcycle shop told me I could ride his 250 Suzuki, so I did, rode that, and that was the beginning of my racing career. I was 17, raced against Morehead, was competitive with him, and he was going to turn pro that next year, so that's when I turned pro, and that's how it started.
My grandpa raced on the board tracks. He had rode motorcycles all his life, and my dad rode, but he just rode, always had bikes, but he just dirt rode, just out trail riding and stuff. But he used to take me to Ascot every weekend when I was 8 and 9 years old, and every single Friday night we'd go watch at Ascot, either the half mile or TT. And halfway, we'd go, every weekend we'd go down to the pits, and my dad would talk to Mert Lawwell, and I would get his autograph every time Mert was there. About halfway through the 70 season, when Mert was number 1, we went down, I got his autograph, he was talking to Dad, and he looked at Dad and I and said, I'm going to take you guys to dinner next week. And here I am, a 9-year-old kid, he's national number 1. And I thought, wow, he's just saying that. So next week we went to the races. Mert won the main event. We went down there. I got his autograph. He goes, you guys ready to go? I'm taking you guys to dinner. And Mert Lawwell, national number 1, took us to dinner. And at 9 years old, I was like, I can't believe this. This is unbelievable. And so we moved to Virginia. And when I was 12, my dad got me an XR75. He said, you want to go race at Portsmouth Stadium? And I said, yes. And I went, and we ended up 3rd that night on a stock XR75. And then that's what started it. But my grandpa, my dad, and Mert Lawwell were the big influences on getting me started. You know.
Yeah, this speaks a little louder, don't it? My dad was an influence on me. We had a bull taco dealership right up beside our house. It's just in a garage. And every day I was out there working with my dad doing something. I was the kid that he couldn't run off. And, but I started riding when I was about 4 years old, and just rode. He used to sponsor racers. You know, Roger Crump was one of the main ones that he helped, and they always kept saying, you know, you need to race. And I was like, oh no, I just want to ride. So I rode and rode and rode, and then eventually they talked me into racing, and I won my first race, and then I was hooked ever since.
Won the first race?
First race I ever won. The first race I won it. Was actually at a motocross. It was at Cohutta Motocross. And then we had a flat track there in Dalton. It was called Dalton Raceway, and that's where, like I said, Roger and all the other guys that my dad used to help. And he bought me an SO70 after that. My first race, believe it or not, was a Trail 70. So, running on a motocross, so who would think you could ride one of them on motocross? But anyway, I did, and then he got me an SO70, and we started flat tracking, and I love the flat track. You know, run motocross to start with, but I didn't care a whole lot about it, and you know, after we did the SO70, got the XR75, and then just went from there.
How old were you? How old were you when you won that first race?
9 years old.
Natural talent?
I'm not sure.
Well, my story's a little different. I was born into this. My dad was a Triumph dealer in 1961 in Elyria, Ohio. He was a second Yamaha dealer east of the Mississippi. And of course, in them days, motorcycle shops, their big deal was speed tuning. And my dad before that was in the Air Force, and he was stationed in Utah at Hill Air Force Base, and he was won the national hill climb. She said there's only one guy in the hill climb he couldn't beat, and that was right here in West Virginia, and that was Dave Easton. So he was a hill climber too. But got the shop and of course started promoting races. They built a racetrack, a local TT Scrambles track. But I more worked in the motorcycles all through when I was old enough, I was washing parts. I mean, a lot of guys rode for my dad. National number Lenny Waldo, national number 70. Of course, Ronnie rode for Dad from 64 on the TT bikes, and then rode the Triumph from 69, I think, to 73. And I worked on the bikes all the time with Dad. He would bring them in, I would tear them down and meticulously clean everything, and then he would put them back together. So I didn't ride a lot of sportsman stuff. I was busy going to nationals and going to races with Ronnie. And I stayed at the Penny Farm quite a little bit, and we rode at the track that Norbert, I think he said something about him and Ronnie built the little short track. I finally got to where I could keep up with Ronnie and sometimes beat him. And Ronald says, you need to get your license. So that's how I ended up kind of going pro. I was real happy just working on motorcycles. In 71, the Thrill was on there. That was probably one of my favorite years because Frenchie LeBlanc rode for my dad as a junior, and Ronnie rode for Dad as an expert, and they won. Ronnie won like 13 main events in a row, and Frenchie won one more, 14 in a row. So we were really fun for me to work on them and watch them win. And then it was fun just to go riding too.
You're a little younger than Ronnie?
Oh yeah, I'm a lot younger than him.
Thank you, 5 gentlemen and 1 lady. And now we're going to flash back to Hawthorne Raceway, 1983. This is from the Superchargers, a show that my good friend Jan Gabriel produced. And he's joined by Gene Romero, the late great Gene Romero, who I only talked to one time, but he told me he appreciated what I was doing with the TV show. So let's go to my 2 late friends, Gene Romero and Jan Gabriel.
I'm J.C. Gabriel, along with former national number 1 Gene Romero, and also joining us will be Linda Marshall. And Gene, indeed, the very best are here.
Boy, that's a fact. We have Jay Springsteen, Randy Goss, Bubba Schobert, Mike Kidd, Terry Poovey, Steve Morehead. We got Ricky Graham, the Grand National Champion. It's going to be one great race today.
In total, there are 100 motorcycles here. They're now qualifying. There will be 48 riders that make the program, and they'll whittle those down to the final 17 that will go into the national final, and that's worth big money.
Boy, that's correct, and it's going to be 25 laps on a different mile racetrack than what we're accustomed to, because at this particular race circuit, the straightaways are real long and the corners are very tight, and it's going to be real demanding on the riders and the equipment.
And the speeds should be exceptional here today.
Yes, we expect with straightaways like this, excess of 130 miles an hour.
Should be exciting. And right now, we're going to go to another part of the racetrack, and Linda Marshall with a very special young lady.
Tammy Jo Kirk, a 21-year-old from Dalton, Georgia, the first woman ever to compete in an AMA national final. In fact, 2 of them. And today, she's going for her 3rd. Tammy Jo, how does it happen that a girl like you from Dalton, Georgia gets started in racing against some of the top motorcycle racers in the world?
Well, my father, he used to be a racer, and he sponsored racers, and when I was born, I was supposed to be a boy and being a racer, so he just brought me up and had to, work with a girl, so I've done the best I can and done real well.
What do you think your chances are today, Tammy?
Well, I think I got a good chance of making a final because the track looks real good, and I just hope I go out there and do my best and make a final like the 3rd today.
We sure do wish you the best. Tammy Jo Kirk.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that little flashback to the past when we seen Tammy Jo Kirk when she was competitive on the AMA circuit. She made the finals, the national finals, 13 times. Her best finish was 6th at the DuQuoin Mile in 1986. She then went on to race NASCAR. She ran the Truck Series and the Busch Series. which is quite a feat when you figure out you got to put the big sponsorships together, and she was competitive in both series. As we see her XR 750 for Greg Pearson, Grand National Books, it's gncbook.aol.net. For Mark Mederski, go to motorcycleclassics.com, and Tammy Kirk now owns a Honda dealership. It's kirkcycles.com. That's kirkcycle.com. I had a great time in West Virginia. To contact me, and I love to hear from my audience, it's teamdan45@gmail.com. Remember, you can always search on YouTube with Dan Schmitt Motorcycle Racing for great motorcycle racing action, Dan Schmitt Politics, to learn what makes America great. And I highly encourage you to visit the World of Motorcycle Museum. They're in Winamac, Indiana, 4 miles south of North Judson on Indiana Highway 39. But give them a call first at 574-896-3172. It's a great trip and a great collection of motorcycles. If you want to pick up your copy of the Team Chicago History Package, go to Rich's Yamaha in Lockport, Illinois. But give them a call first at 815-838-8130. Their website is richesyamaha.com. Pick up your copy of the Team Chicago History Package. And if you want to learn everything there is to know about motorcycles, there's nothing like going to a swap meet. Here's a few dates: Woodstock, Illinois; Oregon, Illinois; Springfield, Ohio; Shepherdsville, Kentucky; back to Woodstock, Illinois. The one in Oregon, Illinois is at the Rock River Riders Club Grounds, and that's right across the road from White Pines State Park.